We all face those moments, don't we? You know, the curveballs life throws, the unpleasant stuff, the real hardships. What's your usual reaction? Do you, like, try to dodge them, wish they weren't happening, or is there maybe another way?
And that other way, well, that brings us right into this really powerful, though um, often tricky idea, amor fati.
Amor fati.
Yeah, it's Latin,
Yeah.
means love of fate. And for Friedrich Nietzsche, this wasn't just, a nice thought. He actually called it his formula for greatness.
Wow, okay. Formula for greatness.
Yeah.
That's quite something. And that's exactly what we're diving into today. We've got some really interesting sources lined up.
We do.
We're looking at an academic paper that really digs into Nietzsche and Amor Fati, another piece on Schopenhauer, his pretty pessimistic ideas about love and life.
Which definitely reflects his whole worldview.
Yeah, and then there's this great discussion comparing Nietzsche and Schopenhauer directly on suffering. Should be illuminating.
Absolutely. And our aim here, I think, for this deep dive isn't just to skim the surface, like, oh, love your fate. We really want to unpack what amor fati meant in Nietzsche's, well, let's face it, complex philosophy.
For sure.
Look at how it connects to things like suffering and that other big idea of his, the eternal return. And importantly, see how it differs from other ways of thinking, especially Schopenhauer's views on the will and suffering.
Okay, let's jump in then. The core idea, amor fati. Nietzsche clearly thought it was incredibly important. Our academic source says he called it his inmost nature,
Hmm.
and even the highest state a philosopher can attain. That's a big claim.
It really is.
But the paper right away points out a couple of, well, paradoxes maybe.
Yeah.
Things that seem contradictory.
Yeah, exactly. The first one is sort of obvious when you think about it.
Yeah.
How can you genuinely love something that might be, frankly, repellent? Fate includes all the bad stuff, right? Suffering, loss. How do you love that?
Yeah.
And the second paradox is,
Right.
well, what's the point? Fate happens whether we love it or not. Our love doesn't change it. So isn't loving it kind of pointless, futile?
It almost sounds like just, toughing it out, bearing it. But the paper makes a key distinction, right? It brings in the Stoics. They were big on accepting what you can't control.
They were.
So how was Nietzsche's idea different? Was it just Stoicism repackaged?
Not quite. The Stoics, they emphasized rational acceptance, kind of a detachment almost. Nietzsche acknowledges necessity, sure, a thing you can't change. But he pushes for something more, an active love, an affirmation.
Active love.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he connects fate to what is necessary, even everything that is necessary. It suggests this total embrace of the world exactly as it is. And the paper argues this big, all-encompassing view of fate is really tied up with his idea of the eternal return.
Ah, the eternal return again, the idea that everything happens over and over.
Infinitely, yes, that all in acceptance is key.
Okay, so how do we even start to wrap our heads around loving this? This whole package, fate, especially the difficult bits? The paper brings up eros and agape as ways to think about it.
Yes, two classic concepts of love. Eros here is like, well, erotic love, I suppose. You love something because it have qualities you value,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
beauty.
Okay.
So an erotic take on amor fati would be about learning to see the necessity, the fate, as beautiful or valuable in itself. Kind of like educating your perception.
So training yourself to see the good, find the beauty, even in the hard stuff.
Sort of, yeah.
Mm.
But the paper points out some problems with just that view. Kant, for instance, argued love is a feeling, not just a decision, right?
Right.
You can know something is good or necessary, but that doesn't make you love it. There's a gap. Willing yourself to love doesn't always work.
Yeah, that makes total sense. I know broccoli is good for me. Doesn't mean I love it.
Exactly. That's the motivational gap they talk about. So that brings us to agape.
Agape, how does that fit in?
Agape is often described as like unconditional love. But the key idea here is that the love itself creates the value. You don't love it because it's inherently great. You value it because you love it.
Ah, okay. Like a parent's love for a child.
That's a common example, yeah. The love comes first,
Yeah.
and that bestows value. So this agapic view helps with those paradoxes. You can love a difficult fate because your love itself starts to transform how you see it.
It changes your perception of it.
Exactly. And it solves that motivational gap because the act of loving is the valuing. It's not about finding pre-existing reasons to love it. The love itself is the reason, in a way.
Wow. That's a really different way to think about it. Your love actually shapes the value of your experiences.
It's a powerful idea. It suggests amor fati isn't passive acceptance, but an active choice to value your whole story, which then changes how those parts affect you.
Okay, that agapic view really shifts things. Now, let's connect this back to the eternal return. I remember that thought experiment. The demon asks if you'd relive your entire life exactly the same forever.
Yeah, the gay science. It's intense.
How does amor fati relate to that?
Well, the paper suggests you can look at the eternal return through both lenses, eros and agape.
Right.
From the erotic view, thinking about eternal return is like a training ground, a test. Can you look at your whole life, good and bad, and honestly say yes again?
Hmm.
It forces you to find that perspective where you see the necessity as beautiful or at least acceptable enough to want infinitely.
So it's a tool to build that affirmative perspective, like
Yeah.
a mental exercise.
Pretty much. A radical affirmation tool.
Mm.
But the agapic view sees it differently. It's less a rational test, more a poetic scenario that can trigger amor fati.
Trigger it? How?
It's about the feeling, the potentially overwhelming realization that this is your life in its entirety, forever. That moment could potentially spark this agapic love, this total affirmation. The paper uses this term, mediopassive.
Media.
Yeah, it basically means it's not something you entirely control, nor something that just happens to you without any involvement. It's like you're receptive, open to this transformation the thought might bring about. It's an experience.
So less thinking your way into it, more like a profound feeling that changes you.
Exactly, the
What?
potential moment of revelation.
Okay. Now, suffering. It feels like the ultimate test for amor fati. And the sources say suffering itself can be a pathway there. That sounds counterintuitive.
It really does, but again, that agapic interpretation helps. Think about Nietzsche's own life. He was plagued by illness, right?
Constantly, yeah.
And he sometimes wrote about sickness almost as a blessing. Not that he liked being sick, but that the experience forced him to develop certain strengths, insights. It shaped him.
So he found value in the experience of suffering, even if the suffering itself was awful.
Precisely. The paper is clear, though.
Hmm.
Not just any suffering works. It often needs to be, pretty intense, maybe prolonged. And again, that media-passive idea comes up. We don't choose suffering.
Definitely not.
But we have some say in how we relate to it, how we exist within that pain.
And Nietzsche pointed to specific qualities that help here. You mentioned courage.
Yes, courage, moral strength, and clarity of vision. The paper argues these help fight off the negatives like self-pity or just giving up. He criticized what he called Russian fatalism as just a temporary coping mechanism,
Right.
and also self-deception, pretending things aren't so bad. Amor fati doesn't make the pain vanish, but it's about this huge shift in your relationship to the experience, letting you love your life despite the pain included in it.
It sounds like it's not just about stoically enduring then. The paper mentioned positive outcomes too, like feeling more whole or finding more joy.
Absolutely. It's not meant to be grim. Embracing your whole fate, warts and all, can apparently lead to this deeper sense of fullness, powerfulness of the soul, they call it.
Okay.
A new increase in the blissfulness of love. Renewed sensitivity to joy, gratitude for small things. There's that famous line from Zarathustra. We love life, not because we are used to living, but because we are used to loving.
Yeah. That captures it beautifully. It reframes everything. But, okay, the paper doesn't shy away from objections either. What about the past? We can't change what happened. Our human love doesn't seem powerful enough for that.
That's a really key point. Divine love might, redeem the past in some theological sense. But for us humans, Nietzsche talks about willing backwards, this kind of superhuman ability to affirm the past retroactively.
Willing backwards sounds impossible.
Well, yeah, maybe superhuman. But the paper suggests amor fati is the more human, achievable version. It's like a secular form of acceptance, maybe even grace, that transforms our relationship to the past and present. We can't change the events, but we can change their meaning for us now.
So it's less about rewriting history in your head and more about fully owning it as part of who you are now and living fully in the present without being dragged down by regret.
Exactly that. The focus shifts to the present, informed by the past, not trapped by it. But then there's that other worry, self-deception.
Right. How do you know you're not just kidding yourself? Just saying you love fate because it hurts too much to admit you hate it.
Valid concern. The argument is that genuine amor fati involves such a deep transformation that your actual aversion to the pain gets, transfigured, changed. So the need for self-deception kind of devolves. It's not about pretending. It's about a fundamental shift in how you experience things.
A very high bar. And can it last? Can you maintain this state?
Probably not constantly, no. The paper acknowledges that. We're finite humans. Life throws new challenges. Amor fati might come and go, but that's maybe not a failure, just the nature of being human.
Okay. And what about the moral side? Loving your fate is one thing, but does that mean loving the suffering of others? That feels wrong.
Yeah, that's a really important, tricky point. The paper suggests Nietzsche probably saw amor fati as a very personal first-person thing. Loving your necessary path doesn't automatically mean you should affirm or love someone else's suffering.
So you can love your own journey without endorsing the bad things that happen to others.
Right. Love isn't always transitive like that. You can love your life, accept its hardships as part of your story, while still feeling compassion and wishing things were different for someone else. The paper even hints that amor fati might change our moral feelings themselves, but that's getting really complex.
It definitely sounds like a deeply individual, complex path. Okay, let's bring in Schopenhauer. Nietzsche admired him early on, but they really diverged, especially on suffering, right?
Massively diverged, yes. Schopenhauer had this profoundly pessimistic view. He saw the world driven by this blind, irrational will, a constant striving that never finds satisfaction and therefore is the root of all suffering.
So for him, life is suffering, essentially, and pleasure is just temporary relief.
Pretty much. Pleasure is just the gap between desires, the brief pause in suffering, a very bleak picture. And this fundamental view shapes everything else.
Okay, so where did Nietzsche break from that? He certainly knew suffering.
Oh, absolutely. But he rejected Schopenhauer's conclusion that suffering was inherently bad and something to be escaped at all costs. For Nietzsche, suffering could be, well, useful.
A catalyst.
Useful, yeah, for growth, for self-overcome. Remember that line about suffering being a hammer to make myself a new pair of wings? That's pure Nietzsche, directly opposing Schopenhauer.
So Schopenhauer says, minimize desire, withdraw, lessen the suffering, Nietzsche says. Embrace it all, use the suffering, affirm life completely.
Exactly. It's a fundamental difference in attitude. Schopenhauer wants escape. Nietzsche wants transformation within life. And this even colors their view on things like love and sex.
How so? The source mentioned Schopenhauer's view on that.
Yeah, Schopenhauer saw romantic love and sexual desire as basically tricks played on us by the will to life to ensure procreation. The goal isn't our happiness. It's just more life, more striving, more suffering. He even pointed to that feeling of sadness after sex.
Post-coital tristesse.
Right. He saw that as a moment of clarity. Ah, I was just used by the will. It reinforces his pessimism.
Wow, so even love is just another manifestation of this suffering engine.
In his view, yeah. Which contrasts sharply with Nietzsche's focus on individual affirmation, finding meaning here, transforming even our drives and desires as part of saying yes to life.
So Schopenhauer sees the will as the enemy, the source of suffering we need to quiet. Nietzsche sees, maybe not the will exactly, but the forces of life, concluding suffering, as something to potentially harness, to affirm, to say yes to.
That's a great way to put it. Amor fati is that ultimate yes. It's not passive resignation like Schopenhauer might lean towards. It's his active, passionate embrace of everything that makes up your life, the joy, the pain, the whole messy, necessary package.
It's about seeing it all as interconnected and finding a way to affirm your existence completely, a powerful alternative to pessimism.
Definitely.
So thinking back to where we started, how we deal with life's difficulties, amor fati, especially seen through that agapic lens, offers this radical path. Not just putting up with things, but actively choosing to value them as part of your unique existence. That feels like it could unlock real strength.
It's a profound shift, yeah.
Yeah.
Moving from endurance to embrace. It's fundamentally life-affirming in a way. Schopenhauer's philosophy just isn't.
It really is. Which leads us to a final thought, maybe, for you listening. Think about a specific difficulty, something you're facing right now. What if you tried applying this idea of amor fati, not forcing yourself to be happy about it, but trying to deeply accept it as part of your necessary path? Could embracing it over time actually change your relationship to it? Maybe even unlock a kind of